Welcome to another edition of Teaching Restored, where we are your weekly gospel teacher council. And we get to do the thing that we love just about the most, which is teach the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Kevin Jones.
And I'm Julie Hilliard.
And this is pretty much our favorite thing to do. I mean,
for sure.
If we could teach all the time, that I would be all over that.
No. Because it really stretches me a lot. And so I think if I was teaching all of the time, I would be like a Gumby. Like I would be stretched out. It would be bad. So you can say that, Kevin, you can say that, but there's nothing relaxing about preparing for or engaging in teaching, and it can deplete you.
I would have said stretch. I would have said Stretch Armstrong myself, but
Stretch Armstrong. I said Gumby.
You said Gumby. That's yeah.
I mean, I want to be flexible. Yeah. But like that's a lot. That's too much.
You're right. But we do love it.
We do love it for sure.
We do love it. Okay. So, Julie, today I am taking today's topic out of this bad boy right here. Teaching in the Savior's Way.
Okay, I'm going to pull it up on my phone.
Okay, great. And I am on page 30. Suggestions for a variety of teaching settings and learners.
Okay.
So I want to go through a few things in this. Okay. It says, President Russell M. Nelson has taught that the home should be the center of gospel learning. Okay, just right there, when we think of that and really take that to heart, the first thing that comes to mind is my home really the center of gospel learning? Or do I let the church be the center of gospel learning and we support the church, right? Kind of the backwards. And then it says, the teaching that happens at church or in seminary is valuable and needed, but it's meant to support the teaching that happens at home. What are your thoughts on this? First off, let's just start with that.
So when you say that, because I am a mother of teenagers who aren't always receptive to the things that I have to say, I might have an oh crap moment in my mind.
Maybe.
Like, oh, dang it. Because there really was something kind of implicit before that the responsibility was that in primary and Sunday school and seminary, like it was set up so that we felt like our kids were getting what they needed in terms of gospel instruction from church. And now when they switched it and that announcement was made, I kind of was like, oh, and especially as I'm trying to apply that right now, it really is a weighty responsibility in my mind.
Yeah, mine as well. And I was thinking about how do we being my family and me, how do I do better at that in my home? Now we have another episode on teaching the family and kind of like scripture study and what that might look like, right? I want to take this a step further than that, a step or two or three or five. As I was thinking about this, there are other ways to teach. We can sit down and say, here is the come follow me lesson for today. Let's talk about this. Let's read the scriptures. What does that mean to you? Right? And that's kind of what we did in that last episode. I don't remember what episode that was, but around 30.
It was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so what I want to do today is talk about different kinds of learning in the home, not just sit down and read the scriptures. So in going through this, I've identified 5 different ways of teaching that we can use. And really, this is just to give ideas of what to do and the impact of them and how to do them and kind of like real life jump in. What can we do to help make the home the gospel center right here?
Okay.
Since they spend so much time at home. So the first one is just discussions.
Okay.
All right. So that we can teach by discussions, first of all. And I made all these notes in this little booklet, and then I closed it, and then I opened it and realized the ink hadn't completely dried. And so I've got a lot of smudges. And so I made little marks for each of them. And I'm like, oh, I don't know which is which now. Wow,
Oh my
look
gosh,
at
I
that.
could see your face kind of looking at something and going, "Oh, oh,
What,
oh."
what the, what the,
I
what
just,
the?
I had that experience when I got up to teach on Tuesday and was about 5 minutes into the lesson, and I realized I'd forgotten my scriptures. And my scriptures are all marked up with all
Oh,
my notes for my
r-
class. So
right.
I'm empathizing.
Well, thank you.
Mhm. It was
Because,
great.
yeah. Do I really know what I'm doing? No. Okay, let's
I
keep going.
know.
Yep. Another thing in here, it says President Nelson has suggested that you might need to transform or remodel your home, not necessarily by tearing down walls or adding new floors, but perhaps by evaluating the overall spirit in your home, including your contribution to that spirit. So when we can have these discussions overall with our children, but I think that sometimes when we think, okay, I got to have these discussions,
Right.
they're forced, right? And they're, okay, let's sit down and have a gospel discussion, children.
Right.
And it doesn't usually go great, does it?
No, because the minute you say that, everybody wants ice cream. Everybody wants to finish their homework. Everybody all of a sudden gets
Wants to take
fidgety.
a
Like
nap.
it literally is like they shift and shut off. I don't even know how to describe it. Like I can't even describe how irritating it is in my house when I say, let's sit down, let's have gospel study. I say the word gospel study and it's like it triggers ADD in everybody. It's so exasperating. I can't even tell you.
I know it. I agree with you. It's like some of my teenagers, we say that and they go, okay, and they lay on the couch and they just, and,
Right.
oh no, no, no. You actually have to sit up to show me you're listening. I mean, your
Why are
eyes
you
are
looking at my
closed
them?
and
I know. I'm like, your body being sprawled. So I will say, let's get off the couch. Let's come sit at the table. And somehow my children figure out how to sprawl across the table while still being seated with their bum on the bench. Like, I do
it's
not
amazing.
understand it.
I know they are so lengthy and they just, I'm with you. And
See
then
how,
Todd does
how
that
much
as
I'm,
well.
okay.
No,
Kevin, you're
what?
not kidding. Todd does that as well.
Oh, Todd.
It's like everybody gets AD. I'm not even kidding. It is a contagious disease in my house the minute I say the words gospel study. Like I cannot explain how exasperating it is. So I have a point that I'm going to make on that a little bit later once I hear your 5 points.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I will throw my husband under the bus after your 5 points.
I loved it. Okay. Good, good, good,
He
good.
doesn't listen that often anyway.
I love Todd. Okay. So it's the discussion piece that I think that, again, I mean, we have an episode on that, but that's what I think what we turn to by natural extension of let's have gospel study. That is what it turns out to be, that we want to teach by having a discussion, which when we talk on this podcast, we talk a lot about having gospel discussions within classes, etc. But there seems to be something different when you're at home and trying to say, let's have a gospel discussion. Everybody, ADD comes out, like you said, and wow. So let's go beyond gospel discussions.
Okay.
I mean, as in planned gospel. I'll label it planned gospel discussions where you think, okay,
Yeah.
I need to have that, right? We need to go beyond that.
Yep.
So so that's the first one, right? And we kind of are waffly on that one. The second one
Oh, wait. So wait, you're saying let's go beyond that, but planned gospel discussions is number one.
is number one. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. Planned gospel discussions. Number two is our environment. We teach by our environment.
Okay.
I'll read in here. For example, consider the music, videos, and other media in your home, the pictures on the walls, the way the members of your family speak to and treat each other. Let's stop right there before I go on. So we talk about media. We talk about pictures. I think I've heard this since I was a kid.
Right.
The pictures on the wall kind of thing, right? What other kind of things can you think of that might create the environment in our home of turning to the Savior?
So I was actually studying about this a little bit earlier
Hmm.
because I was doing a little bit of reading about temples. And one of the things we're preparing to do in our ward is a marriage class. And so, as I'm really fleshing out the purpose of this marriage class, I've been having that phrase about it's from the Bible dictionary, and it talks about how the
Yes.
home is, second to the temple in terms, or is the only other place on earth. I actually, let me read it because I think it's really beautifully
Yeah,
phrased.
I love that. Yes.
Well, but I've always loved it, but I'm thinking about it a little bit differently. And let me see if I can kind of share the thought with you just really fast. There's T. Okay. So TEM. Sorry, this will just take me a quick second.
That's
Found
okay.
it. So it talks about how a temple is literally a house of the Lord and describes it as a holy sanctuary. And then it says, only the home can compare with the temple in sacredness.
There you go.
And if I'm thinking of the temple as a place where the Lord comes to dwell, where the Lord's presence can be felt, where like he literally comes, I started to think about and the marriage class specifically is going to be talking about the way that we communicate in our relationships. Communication is the focus of this marriage class. And I started thinking about if we're trying to create a sacred environment, not only the way that husband and wife talk to each other, but also the way that we talk to our children is really, really important. And the hardest conversations that you will ever have in your life are going to be with the people that know you the best because they know
Hmm.
how to push your buttons and they know the things that trigger you emotionally. And unfortunately, we weaponize some of that information against each other when we're feeling emotional and frustrated. And so
Sure.
that part really stuck out to me when you were talking about the environment and trying to create a sacred environment is the way that we interact and communicate with each other can really detract or enhance our desired kind of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's kind of I don't know if you've had this feeling, but every now and then I'll walk into a home that I've never been in. And I'll walk in, I'll go, I feel the spirit right off. I
Yeah,
mean,
like
there,
immediately you can feel good. Yeah.
there's something here. This is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with not only the physical space, but also that I mean, exactly what you're talking about right there.
Yeah.
Um, about how we communicate, about how we treat each other
Hmm.
within the walls. Um, I would like to think, I would hope that our home, my home, I'll say my home, could be one where a friend comes over and they know that they're safe. They know that they're going to be spoken of well. They know that we uplift and inspire each other, and there's not a lot of arguing and fighting and whateverness, but we want to
Whateverness.
whateverness, you know.
What word is that?
Well, I was thinking, well, I went to actually, and not a lot of my thought was laziness, but I thought, well, there's so much more than just laziness. So I just went to ness, you know.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
It's like the ites, and every men
I
are
got
of ites,
it.
right? It's the
I
same
got it.
thing. Yeah,
I
yeah.
got it. I'm tracking.
Okay, very good, very good. Because not everyone always tracks with me. So,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
um,
Can
let's
I
see
actually,
here.
before we move on to the next thought, can I actually throw something out as well? Because you
Yep.
brought something up that kind of made me go, ooh. So you were talking about the way that we treat each other, that there's not a lot of fighting, that they can kind of feel it, and it's not just the environment of the home. So I live in a very chaotic home because I have a son with severe special needs, and when people come into our home, he gets louder
Mm-hmm.
because attention is distracted from him, and that just makes him mad. And it's interesting because so often I've been frustrated by the chaos, and I've been frustrated when people come in that I can't give them the attention that I think they want, and I think they're going to walk away feeling badly about our home environment and not necessarily want to come back. And it's really interesting to me that that is rarely the case.
That's right.
That we can have chaos, we can have kids that argue sometimes even, and sometimes people are comforted by the normalcy, and to recognize that you can sometimes have imperfections and still somehow find beautiful things in it is almost reassuring to people versus walking into a pristine home where the children never fight, where I
Yes.
do want to point out kind of the normalcy can actually help to invite that spirit as well, and being just okay with each other, not necessarily perfect with each other, but being just good to each other. And okay. Like, I
Right.
don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. And I feel that way. When I come to your home, it's a very loving home. And yet it can be kind of loud because Matt,
Zoo.
right. I mean, Matt
Yeah.
comes up, runs up, and shows me what he's got right there, and
Yeah.
I love that. And then they're all, every now and then it's, hey, you got to sit down, okay, and then let's get some food or whatever it is, and that's okay. And I love it because in that there is so much love.
Yeah. And that's what people
Within
feel.
that, yeah,
Yeah. Like it doesn't, I just don't want to, when you were talking about the environment, I just thought I would hate for somebody to think, well, that doesn't describe my house. Because I think imperfection probably describes our houses more often than, some of the things that we list as contributing to the spirit in our home. No, 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 no. I just want to point out that that underlying love can be felt through imperfection.
yeah, because there is no perfection.
No. We don't
Right.
want to create Instagram houses. Like that's not what we're going for
The
here.
perfect home I'm going to say doesn't exist.
I concur.
Okay. There's a whole bunch of messiness, and the spirit can still be felt in the messiness. Right. That's at least the way I feel.
I would agree.
Okay. Okay. When we talk about consider the music, videos, and media in our home. So it says these sentences, and then it asks a question. Do these things invite the influence of the Holy Ghost? And when I think of that, I think the first thing that pops into my mind is, does the media, when I'm thinking about the media and the music and videos and et cetera, does that lend to the spirit? Mm-hmm. And I have to check myself and say, okay, well, we watched this. Does that lend to the spirit? And I always maybe am too hard on myself, but maybe I'm not hard enough about, right. Okay, did we all watched this movie, and if this is supposed to be a sacred place, did that lend to the sacredness? Mm-hmm. So is the sacredness the bond, or is it what is in the home itself? I'm going to say it's both, really. Mm-hmm. But to what degree do we take that? I don't know the answer. I don't know that there is an answer. I'm hoping that there isn't an answer, so I don't feel as bad that I don't have an answer, basically.
So here's the thing. Here's what I would actually say. I actually have a thought, not an answer.
Okay.
I know better sometimes. Like,
we all.
If I feel like that's when it's a problem. Mm-hmm. Is when I'm literally allowing something that I know I shouldn't.
Sure.
Versus entertainment is not of the devil by virtue of the fact that it's entertaining.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And so I hate to have, like, I don't even feel like you can put a label on it. I feel like this is one of those kind of for the strength of youth pamphlet principles where they lay it out and then you have to govern yourself. And so I would hate for anybody to think that I need to go to an extreme. I can never bring anything in. Netflix is, whatever. And no, I mean, that's just not true. But I think when we know better and we still choose to do it, that's when it becomes a problem.
And I think it's more being just led by the Spirit as to when we know better. So, for example, there is a series I watched recently, and it only has one season in it so far. And to me, it blew my mind. It was just, the storyline was so good. I loved it. And it had a whole bunch of junk in it, but I have VidAngel. And so I edited out all the junk. And so it was just wonderful. However, it was a really dark show, as in a lot of it happened at night and was darker, right? Kelly doesn't like those shows. She likes Anne of Green Gables and Little House on the Prairie, where it's all outside and the flowers are blooming and all that. And I think that's great. And she doesn't like the dark, where it's set in a darker atmosphere. And so she doesn't want to watch that. And I do. And I always have to check, okay, is that because I'm that much more of a heathen? Or I don't know. That's
Only
really not
Anne
it.
of Green Gables for non-heathens.
That's right.
That's it. That's all
And
you
that's
get.
not it. But we do have to check. And so that's a good reminder when she says, yeah, I don't want to watch that. I always have to check myself and say, okay, does she want to watch that just because that's not her preference? Or is that because it really doesn't bring the spirit in? And every now and then I need to go, yeah, I shouldn't have, that's not something that we should have brought into our home. Or it's, no, that's actually okay. That's just fine. It's just
Right.
entertainment. And,
Right.
the spirit can still be here. It didn't drive out the spirit, for example. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
So we
I want
teach.
to know what show it was. I
What
have
was
a
that?
guess. I have a guess as to what show it was.
Oh, what was it?
Was it Night Agent?
No.
Oh,
Although
okay.
that's really fun as well.
I know. I watched that one on VidAngel. Okay, keep going. We digress. Go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So the environment, so we talked about the basic things, and I'm going to stretch your mind just a little bit because I'm struggling stretching myself. What are the kind of environment things can we set up in our home that will naturally teach the gospel? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Well, so Todd makes fun of me,
Okay.
but I have quotes on my walls that my kids read, and they're meaningful. And we have lots of books available and things like that. But when you're talking about what kinds of things we can set up in our environment that would naturally help to teach the gospel, I'm struggling a little bit to come up with anything beyond that.
So, and that's what bothers me. Not that
Yeah.
you can't think of anything, but
Yeah. Thanks. Are you annoyed with me now?
I'm throwing you under the bus.
bucking you so
Yeah,
much.
great. You're a co-host and
Yeah.
you can't think of
You're
anything else.
no help.
You're out of here.
I'm fired.
I can't think of much either. And I've thought some about this, and maybe I haven't thought enough about it. Maybe I need to walk around my home and go, okay, physically or spiritually or whatever, what can I do to change the environment in my home? And I don't know, because I feel like this goes deeper than what I'm thinking. I think this goes a lot deeper.
Okay,
I just don't know
thought
where
of
that
something.
is. Okay, please.
Okay, so tell me if this at all feeds that kind of
Okay.
that this goes deeper idea. So you said that thing about transforming your home and remodeling your home. That was a
Yes.
quote from President Nelson, right? And as you're talking about this right now, this is one of the thoughts that popped into my head when you said, what is available in the environment. This speaks to me. I have had to, when we did a remodel recently. And when we did the remodel, one of the things that we really wanted was to have more places for people to gather. And so part of what we've done is we've set up a family room where there's space for everyone to have a really comfortable seat. We've set up a counter with an island that's big enough for all of us to stand around. And drink hot chocolate at, because hot chocolate's our favorite thing. In my bedroom, I've added some chairs. So like my son, if I'm even in bed and he comes home late at night, he's right by me. If he goes and he plops his bum down in that chair and wants to tell me about his date or something like that, I'm right there. And that was very intentional for me. Like I want in my bedroom, in all of these other spaces, to have places for people to sit down and naturally discuss things. And that is, I think, an environmental.
Yes.
Does that go along with what you're saying?
Absolutely. I love that, because as you say that, I start thinking, I've been thinking about doing some remodel to our kitchen, and I've spent a lot of time already thinking about the island itself.
Yeah.
And how to redo that, because we spend a lot of time in the kitchen standing around, and it's not the most comfortable to just stand around. So how can I expand it out a little bit and put some more seating around in there? Or, and I think about our family room where we have this comfy couch, but at the same time, how do we make it more inclusive in there? And maybe I should knock out a wall over here. I mean, my mind goes way beyond what Kelly wants me to be thinking about, for sure. But
don't you think that being intentional about, like, I want places that people can gather, and it's not that you have to remodel your home. Sometimes it's just as simple as, I'm going to remove those decorative pillows from that place so someone feels like they can sit there.
Right.
Or, maybe I'm going to have a bean bag in addition to all of these things because we have 6 people in our family and there's only spots for 5 people to sit down.
Right.
Or do you know what I mean? I don't know if that resonates with
Yes.
anybody, but
Let me throw out one more that you made me think of as well. We went to the coast recently. This is going to sound goofy, but it's a real thing, and so I'm just going to say it. So we went to the coast for our annual coast family group. All went, family reunion ish type thing. We all went there, and one of the last days we went to Pig and Pancake.
I like bacon.
Pig and Pancake.
Yummy.
And we get there, and I think we had 14 of us, including the kids, and there is no table that fits 14. Right. And so what they do is they typically put tables together and make a long table, but then you can't talk to people on the opposite side of the table.
Right.
So instead, they had this huge table, 6 feet wide, but round.
Oh.
And we all fit around it. And we could all talk to each other. And we were thinking, hey, this is what we need. And so I came home and I was talking to someone in our ward who does woodworking. And I said, hey, I was thinking about building this. And he goes, my son is selling that. He has the table and they don't need it anymore. So we went over there and we bought the table. And now we have a big round table that we could fit 12 to 14 people at. Which we have that big of a group sometimes, and we can all talk to each other. So, and it's not so much the goal here isn't to make a place where we can all just talk. It's when we can talk like that, or when we can gather like that, it's more likely to have the gospel discussions. Right? That's really the end goal. We want to have those bigger, wonderful, family-loving discussions where if the environment isn't set up correctly, it's more difficult to have those. And then, people start falling asleep or they leave because there isn't a spot for them or whatever it is. I need to really put more thought into this, though, in the environment overall. One thing is music. I'll mention this. With Kelly, when she was homeschooling the kids, she always was playing classical music on her computer, always in the background. And the kids remember that to this day. It's just a thing of just in the background. Classical music was playing in the background, always. Or she'd have her Pandora gospel channel on or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of things in the background make a big difference. So homework for me, I need to go think about this more.
Yeah. I mean, me too. This is great. This is a great thing to spend a little bit of brain power on.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe we can have, for example, I can sit my family down and say, okay, what do you think? What can we do as a family, right? And get everyone's input on. I've never asked them.
Right.
I think I should do that.
I do subscribe to the philosophy of no involvement, no commitment.
Yes.
And so involving our family in these types of plans is very important, in my opinion.
Good. I agree. Okay. Third one, we can teach by habits.
Okay.
All right. Here's a little paragraph that I'm going to read from here. Parents sometimes get discouraged when their attempts to teach the gospel at home don't seem to be succeeding. Taken individually, a single home evening, scripture study session, or gospel conversation may not seem like it's accomplishing much, but the accumulation of small, simple efforts repeated consistently over time can be more powerful and strengthening than an occasional monumental moment or landmark discussion. I want to give an example of this. I was talking to my daughter, Tessa. When Tessa was young, so we have our first 3 kids are like 3 years apart. And then there's a 3-year break for Tessa. And so that meant that some of her taking to seminary, there was no driver. I was the driver. Right. There was no older kid to drive at sometimes. And so we had to drive. And every morning she would get it. And she, in the morning, at least then, was grumpy pants. Okay. She would not talk. she's a very, she's so incredibly
Oh,
bubbly, but
she's
in the
like
morning,
gregarious. Yeah, she's
she's anti that. She's just,
okay.
that's all I hear from her.
Fair.
How you doing? Just love
Mm.
you. And then, so we'd get in the car and I would play a conference talk every day as we went to seminary
In silence.
in silence. And we just listened to a conference talk. It wasn't music. It was just conference talk every time. She still does that
When she's driving to seminary
when she
as an
goes to
adult?
work
Oh,
every
okay.
day when she goes to work. And she was just called as a seminary teacher. So yes,
But now when she goes to
that,
seminary, oh, I didn't actually think that was a real thing.
yeah. So I guess she can do that too, but she does that to work. And she did that through high school up to her mission and then after her mission as well. And she still does that.
That's
And
awesome.
I love that. I love that that habit got in there of doing those small things. Another simple one is just, I know this is so simple, but it's a huge thing. Family prayer.
Yes.
Family prayer in the morning, family prayer at night is what we do. And it's just a habit. Everyone knows, everyone expects it. What other kind of things can you think of that might become habits that we can instill in our family to teach by habit?
Well, even prayer over meals
Yep.
is a habit. Like there's some things that I do that are so habitual that I actually don't even think about it. But, reading the scriptures in a public place in your home instead
Mhm.
of just only reading them in your bed, or, on Sundays, every family has different rules about how to keep the Sabbath day holy, right?
Mhm.
But making maybe explicit commitments with each other and then having those become habits. And so, like for our family, one of the things that we say is we won't watch the same TV shows or listen to the same music. And so we intentionally, isolate certain categories of
Mhm.
music and any
Great.
television, and there usually isn't much for the Sabbath. And so those are some of the habits that like my kids just know. They don't ask. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes they'll say, "Do you
Yeah,
think this is Sunday appropriate?" or whatever, and we kind of talk about it together. But I think that there are lots of those types of habits that we almost don't even think about, that they're almost unconscious, but are teaching the gospel just by repetition.
I agree. Now, what do you think about instilling those habits later on? So, for example, when they're kids, it's easier to
Mhm.
instill those habits. We do it and they just grow up with it. What if you decide, you know what? Oh, I heard this great idea. I'm going to do this habit with my family. And, and now they're teenagers.
Okay, come like come follow me is that for us. Like that
Sure.
my brother and sister-in-law have these two beautiful twin daughters that are 9. And so by the time, like in their minds, they have always done come follow me. Like
Right.
always.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so it's a habit. They have the specific way that they do it. They talk about it. It just is. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be nice? Because mine were old enough to resist by the time we actually started this. Sometimes I think about that with my brother. I'm like, I have like holy envy for some of the peace that they have in their home. And so I'm like, that is so much harder. And so we almost have to fight against, you have to almost fight to start a habit. You have to really
Mhm.
work at it. And I've tried so many different strategies to put good gospel study habits in place in our home, and most of them have flopped. And so maybe one of the habits is trying new strategies. Oh my gosh, that is a terrible thought. But like really, truly, it
Actually,
is.
not.
Okay, so maybe the principle here is that we
Hmm.
have a habit of making effort.
I like that. I like that a lot. Hmm.
Like I'm not trying to justify the fact that it's not going great in our home sometimes. I really am not trying to
The silver
rationalize it.
lining, right?
But I genuinely think that my kids would say my mom was always trying. And I don't know that that's a terrible thing.
That's not a terrible thing. That's a great thing. I like that a lot.
That makes me feel better.
There you go. That's what we're here to do, to help Julie feel better.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, I mean, it's really though, it is. When you see your parents trying, they may try a lot of different things. They may go, that was dumb, that was dumb, that was dumb. Maybe one might catch, maybe two might catch, whatever. But
Yeah.
you know that your parents always tried.
You know what, Kevin? Like, here's the thing. I think that my parents walk on water. I really do. Like, they are the most saintly people that I've ever met in my life. And we were terrible at family scripture study. And holy cow, my mom tried.
Sure.
She tried so hard. That and family prayer were two things that we were consistently inconsistent. Well, we were consistent about family prayer, but we were consistently inconsistent about, like, studying the scriptures. And part of it was because my brother would like flex in the mirror every time we try. And so he'd be like reading a verse and then he'd be like, just there was all of this other stuff going on. And it was like, we just all were really bad. We were so, and I'm like, we all turned out okay.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't turn out terrible. And we're like doing our very best, but then getting equally upset with our children to the same degree that my mom got upset with us when we were not cooperating. And we turned out okay.
Yeah. And I think that's when we're raising kids, when we're trying to set this in our home, I think we are way too hard on ourselves when we fail.
Totally.
It's because we're looking at the here and now. If we were to see the long game, I could think when I'm driving Tessa to seminary, I'm failing as a dad because I'm not having a conversation with her because. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not connecting with my daughter and feeling badly about that because she won't talk to me because she's grumpy pants right now. But it actually turned out to be good. And I think when we take a longer look at it and step out of the right now, that we can see that there's actually good being done.
Totally. I would completely agree with you.
Even if it's my parents kept trying and they never gave up trying different things.
Totally.
Great.
And I would say that was true in my house. And so I probably don't need to beat myself up for the consistency of my own effort.
No, not at all.
But I am tempted to give up sometimes. Seriously tempted to throw in the towel sometimes and just be like, fine. You all fought me so much on it. I give up.
I'm not going to be a parent anymore. Huh.
Nope. Or just go passive aggressive and be like, oh, what? You want gospel study now? Okay. We'll see how it goes when you're having to be in charge.
Because that's so you. Yeah.
Did that not seem like me? I'm actually really glad it didn't. Tom might be like, oh, wait, I've heard that before.
Phew. Okay. Next one.
Number 4.
Teach by circumstances.
Explain.
I'm going to read part of a paragraph here. A rainstorm can be a chance to talk about how the Savior shelters us from spiritual storms. A teenager with a difficult decision to make may be ready to learn about personal revelation. A child who is frightened may benefit from your testimony about the Comforter, being Jesus. Children who misbehave or mistreat each other can be taught about repentance and forgiveness. When I read that, the first thing that came to my mind was Ammon, actually. And I'm going to pull this out. It's Alma 17, where it kicks off the story of where they all meet up, and then Ammon tells us, or they tell the story of Ammon. And in verse 29, so Ammon goes to the Lamanites. He's made a servant over the flocks. The Lamanites came and scattered the flocks, and his fellow compadres there are crying and scared to death because they're going to die. And in verse 29, it says, now they wept because of the fear of being slain. Now, when Ammon saw this, his heart was swollen within him with joy.
And they were weeping. That seems so
insensitive.
So insensitive.
Oh my goodness. Yes. But he was excited, for, said he, I will show forth my power unto these, my fellow servants, or the power which is in me, that I may lead them to believe in my words. We can look for, especially with teenagers, holy cow, with teenagers.
I know.
There's more drama there, right? They can come home and go, oh, I had this. And we can almost say, oh, good. I'm so excited that you don't feel great.
My heart is swollen within me with joy at your discomfort and pain.
But every circumstance where there might be pain or discomfort or something, if and I don't do this very well, but I can, I'm like, okay, we got to figure this out. Well, no. What if instead of trying to figure this out and trying to help them get through it, what if our goal was every time to turn them closer to Christ? And that was, because that's my goal in there, kind of as a side benefit, but I want to help them get through this. What if that was our main goal? We saw the angst, we saw the discomfort and the worry in them. And then we saw that and thought, oh, I'm happy. I'm excited because this is an opportunity to help my child understand the role of the Savior in their lives. I think my discussions would be a little bit different with my kids. I think.
So can I agree and add a caution?
Yes.
So as you were saying that, I was thinking, yes. And I can think of so many amazing conversations that I've had specifically with Liam where it's naturally led to a gospel discussion. But here's my caution. I have found myself turning it to a gospel discussion prematurely in our dialogue. And so you can't go there until you have first empathized.
Yes.
You have to really understand where they're coming from before you offer solutions. Mm-hmm. And you have to really, that's true in any circumstance. I'm not just saying gospel solutions, but I'm even talking about giving any kind of gospel instruction. Like it can't come until you have fully invested in their pain point and fully invested in whatever it is that they're feeling. And then when they're ready, like when they kind of, okay, they're so ready because you've literally given them emotional air. They're able to take a deep breath and then, hey, can I share a couple thoughts with you? But not before they've taken that deep breath of, I feel understood. Right. And so fatty caution. And I also was thinking I would put so I'm making a list, a giant asterisk by number 4, because I think that is probably 1,000 times more effective than number 1. And I'm learning right now that planned discussions don't go over well with my family, but these circumstantial opportunities to discuss things are resonating. And I'll hear my kids try and weave solutions together that include aspects of the gospel in the course of that discussion that they would never, ever, ever have shared if it were planned discussion. And the application is almost a no-brainer. Like they are connecting application to whatever principle we're teaching in the course of a number 4 and teaching by circumstance, versus you really have to pull anything beyond a Sunday school answer out of them if you're doing a number 1 planned discussion type of a thing.
Yeah, of course. And I also think that I think with that caution as well of you can't do it, it's got to be the right timing, but it also has to be the right amount at the same time.
Yes.
You can't go full on, maybe you can every now and then, but rarely it's, you know what? The answer to that problem, why don't you go grab your Book of Mormon and then we'll pull out the conference talks too. And we'll find some answers in here for you and go full on. And they're drowning in what? No. Oh my goodness. We've got to bring in the appropriate pieces of the gospel at the appropriate times to help them solve that problem. But if it's overwhelming, because I remember having done, that having been done to me, and not necessarily by my parents, but by others as well, where it was a little bit too much. But at the same time, they're learning what is appropriate. And we have to go through that as well. We have to learn, okay, what is the appropriate amount to bring in for this discussion and feel that out and understand how to feel that out.
It still is off-putting to me when I feel like people shove the gospel at me. And I have a deep and abiding testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But it is off-putting to me when I feel like they shove solutions without first investing what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. And so, times that by 1 billion.
Right.
in terms of our kids, right? And I think
Right.
that also doing it in their language helps it to be less off-putting. Like we really live in a generation where these kids are so turned off by cliches. Like they value authenticity. We have to give them credit for really wanting to be authentic. And that to me means that we have to speak that same language.
Okay.
And so we have
Yeah.
to, when we're teaching, we cannot use a series of cliches to explain a gospel principle,
Right.
which means that we have to actually make sure that we understand it ourselves in terms that are going to relate and resonate with them.
Yep. I think when you and I grew up, there were, I mean, just so many gospel cliches that you heard all the time. And you're right. They don't go for that. They want to hear, okay, what's the real? Give me the real lowdown.
Make it
This
real.
is this, be real with me. Right. So that's really, really good. I like that a lot. Boy, looking for those moments when things aren't going right, to share the gospel at the right time with the right amount. That takes practice.
I love that verse 29 in Alma 17 example
Oh, I
of that. I
know.
think that's phenomenal. It's so good.
I've always loved that. I thought they're crying and he's getting all excited about, yes, all right, now's the
I
time.
know. But it's like the perfect illustration of what you're trying to describe right now, too. I just love it.
And think about it. He did not, you know what? I'm opening that up again. Alma 17. All right. Alma 17. And this is in verse 29. So at this point, he had not mentioned the gospel at all. It wasn't even in the discussion.
Right.
He didn't try to show forth his power at all at this point. He just kind of sat back and waited for the moment to happen. And when it did happen, then he said, okay, I'm going to show forth my power. And he did it. And his words in verse 31, my brethren, be of good cheer and let's go in search of the flocks. He said, we can do this.
Yeah.
He did say, for example, hey, through the power of God and with a whole bunch of prayer, and if we start fasting right now, we can do this. No, it was, hey, we can do this. And then that opened up gospel discussions later, but he was laying the groundwork for it. He didn't jump in and bam. There was a conference talk years ago. Boy, who was it? Dang, I wish I could remember who it was. They said, when someone asks, tell me a little about church, they're not expecting you to go through all the discussions and commit them to be baptized right there, right? They want to know a little bit about your church.
Mm-hmm.
And it's appropriate to give them a little bit about your church, not the whole, all discussions and right. And then he's in front of King Lamoni. He did not jump in and say, King, let me tell you what's going on here. He stopped and he waited and he shut up.
Yeah.
It was silent. He just waited there. And then he says, so I can, just so you know, after, what was it, hours? He said, I can kind of perceive thy thoughts. And he said, what do you want to know? And then they started, King Lamoni started asking questions, and then he started answering. I thought that I hadn't taken it to this level in the preparation of today, but he did it at the right time and in the right amount with each of them. And we too can learn how to do that with our spouses and with our children as well in those experiences.
I love that. There are a couple things I pulled out as you were saying all of that. In verse 31, when it says, be of good cheer and let us go in search of the flocks, he didn't just be like, all right, you guys go and you're going to see this miracle. And I think sometimes with our kids, sometimes we're like, all right, now you got this. And we forget that they need to know that we're going to doesn't matter if this is a really crappy situation. We're going to keep walking through it with them. So that was one thing that stuck out. But then the other thing is you're talking about King Lamoni and the role of silence. Think about how different that discussion would have gone if Ammon would have just started sharing what he thought King Lamoni wanted. I get that he got to the point where he could perceive his thoughts, But we usually, I mean, just usually don't have that ability with our friends. And how often, when somebody asks one question, do we literally just like verbally vomit all over them and share as much information as we possibly can and cram as much in to our response as we
Yes.
could possibly cram in, instead of allowing their questions to lead the discussion? So just giving a little bit, which might prompt another question. And how much more kind of touching is it to them when you are answering things related to their pain points versus trying to predict what they might want to hear and what might resonate with them, and thinking, oh, if I share more, something's sure to stick. No,
Right.
I think that there's such beauty with our kids in doing the same thing. And I get antsy pants. I'm like, oh, he's listening. He's asking a question. Here I go. Bleh.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to take a chill pill and breathe and be patient and not anxious about sharing my answers.
I love the thought of seeing what sticks, just throwing it out there and see what sticks. And then the reverse of that is letting them kind of be a vacuum. And
Yeah.
when they are ready to start sucking knowledge and thoughts up, that's at the point that you introduce it rather than throwing it at them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a completely different. And you're right. It's okay to have some silence. It's okay to wait days, maybe
Oh,
even weeks, maybe even years to bring some things up
yeah.
and to discuss.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be patient sometimes like that. Oh my
I'm
goodness.
so bad at it. I'm so bad.
We want our children to embrace the gospel now, not later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, let me see here. Okay. I think there is one other.
Numero cinco.
All right. Then this is the last one. We can teach. So the last one is teaching by circumstances. I think I want to become a master of teaching by circumstances. I think that's
Me
what I'm
too. I
resolving
have an
today.
asterisk. I like it.
Last one, teach by example.
Oh.
In your home, it says, in your home, let the gospel be something you strive to live by, not just something you talk about. That's really difficult when we fail so much, right?
I know I don't want to talk about that part, except that part of the example is, hey, we're going through this hard thing. I want my kids to see me handle it appropriately and
Yeah.
not be totally dragged down by it and not be completely defeated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's huge.
You talked about authenticity. I think that's a great example of being authentic, saying, hey, kids, this is what we're going through. It's really difficult. You may or may not have seen this, but this is what's actually happening. I want you to know this. I want you to know that if something comes up, this is what's going on, but it's really hard for us. We're trying. We may have a shorter fuse, and we apologize. And then, they can go, oh, I see. They're trying to work through it. They're trying to live these principles and these doctrines at the same time.
I agree.
It says it is meant to be the center of gospel. The home is meant to be the center of gospel teaching because that's where our most lasting relationships are built. So this was really interesting to me because let me read this again. Our home is meant to be the center of gospel teaching because, well, out of all the reasons of the world, why is it meant to be the center of gospel teaching? It's because our most lasting relationships are built there. That is the reason why our home should be the center, is because of those lasting relationships. And if we're slacking on the lasting relationships, it will be hard to be teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. So really the foundation of this, of being able to teach the gospel, is the relationships that we have with our family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a very relational kind of guy. Todd, your husband, Todd, is an awesome relational. He's like my hero in that area.
Good.
And I strive to be like Todd like that. But naturally, I have not built that muscle up like he has.
Yeah.
But if we don't have those relationships, how are we going to teach?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to look when we open our mouth? Well, they just look at us and go, nah, done.
I mean, really, truly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. We were on a run and we were talking specifically about like some family dynamics. And one of the things that I said to her is that my dad's not like a big personality at all. And the thing though that is the most beautiful about my dad, and I said this to her, I said, is that he was always present growing up. Like if I needed to talk, my dad was there. He would drop everything. I was always his priority. And that has really resonated with me throughout my life, just how valuable that was for me and how kind of what's the word, like how unique it was to have a dad that was that present in my formative years. And
That's
she made the
nice.
comment, she's like, your dad's still like that. And I thought, that's something that I think we don't give, like we think that, the person that says the right thing or that does the right thing or whatever, sometimes the best parents are just the parents that are present. And that example of just being present means that, you are relational, if that makes sense. You don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
be like warm and always hugging. And, some people who don't like hugs are still very relational people. I think that we have to really expand what that means, because sometimes being good in relationships just means showing up for people.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I think what you're saying here, it expands the definition of teach by example, because it's not so much maybe that your dad was doing something, like reading the screen. I'm not knocking this at all, but reading the scriptures in front of the kids, right? That is setting a good example. But this is a different type of example. This is just being there for you all the time. And that's huge. And that's not typically what we think of when we think of teaching by example, but it is exactly what it is.
Well, because I think that all we think of is like, I mean, obviously, there are things that I remember one that was specific where anytime my dad had to go to lunch with a female colleague, he would call my mom first and tell her, because he never wanted someone to call my mom because he'd seen her, seen him out to lunch with a female colleague or whatever. And so I remember that, I never even want to give your mom a reason to question my fidelity. I never even want to. And some of those types of things were, my dad's such a good example of da da da. And there are a myriad of those. But I honestly can tell you that the thing that was the most impactful was the way that he showed up. And so as you're saying that, you're right. It's not something that I would traditionally think of, but it is something that has been on my mind, recently, just how powerful that an impact that thing had in my life. And like, as a parent, that's something that I definitely want to emulate. And so for sure, that was part of the example he set.
So I would encourage, I think, everyone to go through and think of how they teach by example in maybe non-traditional ways.
Yeah.
I think all of us would come up with things that we had never thought of before, thinking, you know what, I actually do this. This is something that I haven't never thought of, but I do. So that's another thing for me to spend some time on as well. Just one more thing.
Just make a list
for me to do. Right. Let me see. Oh. Let me throw out this one more point. So really, the 5 ways of teaching: teach by discussion, teach by environment, teach by habits, teach by circumstances that I want to become a master of that, and teach by example or love and building those relationships. So something else in here, passive income. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that is? Can you describe that by any chance?
It's like you don't go to work and make money. It's like money that you're making while you're doing other things.
Yeah. Basically, you've set
really simplistic.
You've set something up, and you don't do much to it, if anything at all, and it just brings in money. So, for example, if you buy a house and you rent it, then for the most part, that's kind of passive income. Now you'll have maintenance on the house and other things, but
Yeah.
if someone rents it or if it's Airbnb'd out, it just keeps coming in, and maybe you have someone else take care of it, and it's just money that comes in, but it doesn't require your attention all the time. I wonder if we can be masters of passive learning, passive gospel learning. And
Like not passive. You have to be careful because you don't want that to think that, you don't have to be active. And so you can
right,
just be passive,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're thinking in
not
the passive income way.
right, not in exclusion of being active, but set our environments up and set our habits up and set our mindset up and set everything up in our homes that teaching the gospel, or I'll say learning the gospel, just naturally happens because you're in the home. It's just a part of it. You almost don't have to do anything, and it just happens all the time. I think there are some things that I can do to make that better I've never thought of that way before, but I bet you there are a number of things that I could do to switch things around or create some habits or whatever to make it more passive learning. And that way we don't have to be present for every single time that they're there, right? The influence of our example, the influence of what's around us will help teach them as well.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I love that. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm thinking of ways that could potentially be happening that I haven't even thought about before. Like you're putting a label on something that, was potentially happening, but can we be intentionally passive? like I'm trying to decide. I don't know.
Can we be intentionally lazy? Is that what we're trying?
I know. I'm like, but as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I wonder if I can set up, because you are intentional when you're setting up passive income sources.
Yes.
Like you have to do work to have that passive income. It doesn't just happen by default. Like I think about, an investment property or something like that. Well, you have to research it. You have to go out, you have to invest in it. You have to do all those things. You have to save the money so that you can put it in. So there's a lot of intentional effort that goes into creating a passive learning opportunity.
Yes. And as an example, in my business, there are so many moving parts. It's mind-boggling, but I have set up the systems to just work.
Yeah.
One thing triggers another thing, and and I don't even have to watch it anymore. Well, not that I don't have to watch the business overall, but there are pieces of it that I don't have to watch, and I know that will just happen. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing with our home. If we can just set it up so that it is always gospel teaching, so that you're right. We have to put in the effort at first, but then we can just kind of put it on autopilot maybe for a little bit and let it run and let it teach.
I don't recommend autopilot. Just saying.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the right.
Yeah, that's not the right one, because you always got to be checking in and checking to see are the results there.
But what I would recommend is putting in a larger island so that you can gather at the island. I mean, just stuff like that. But I really do see what you're trying to describe here. And I'm thinking about how I actually sabotage myself by being so intentional about planning things. And maybe what I need to be more intentional about is creating opportunities. And so by the way that I set them up, not in that moment, but set them up before that moment. You know what this is, actually, Kevin? This is we're in the war chapters right now in Alma. This is what Moroni does. Like during the times when things aren't chaotic, he has his people working on preparations. So what we're basically talking about is preparations for gospel learning. And then when it's go time, it just kind of naturally happens and you're protected and you can be successful. That's
a
kind of
good
what
point.
About, isn't it?
Yeah. Because he set up those mounds around the cities, right?
And the trenches and the walls and
yes,
all of those fortifications, but not thinking of them as ways that you can protect yourself or keep things out, but rather thinking about the preparations in general that you can do to make sure that you have, these gospel learning experiences that don't have obstacles, that just kind of can happen more naturally because of the preparations that you've made.
So good. Good. I love that. I had never thought of that before. That's
it just
really
popped
good.
into my brain.
Wow. Look at that, you smarty pants. Yes, you are. Okay, well, thank you. In preparing this, at first when I was preparing this, I was thinking, okay, there's a whole bunch of different things, and then these 5 different types of ways of teaching kind of came out of this, and I was like, wow, this is really good. This is good for me to be able to kind of put this into kind of a framework to remember those things in different ways. So I hope this is helping others in preparing for their family discussions and family learning and family examples and family circumstances and all that good stuff.
I like it.
I hope so. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you would, please share, subscribe, let other people know that there's a resource for them to learn how to teach the gospel. And it's not so much that we have all the knowledge and we're going to impart with you our knowledge and how great we are, right? It's ideas. Great. Take our ideas and expand on them and make them even better. Please make them better. Go make them work for you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. Talk to you next time.